There was a time when Liam believed his life would never change. At 32 years old, he had no savings, no college degree, no opportunities, and no real future waiting for him. Every night, at exactly 8 o'clock, while most families were sitting together at dinner tables or relaxing in warm homes, Liam put on an old security uniform and walked to a cold warehouse on the edge of town. He worked through the darkness while the rest of the world slept peacefully. Then, every morning at sunrise, exhausted and empty, he walked home alone through silent streets that felt colder with every passing year. His apartment was small, dark, and falling apart. The ceiling fan barely worked. Rainwater leaked through one corner of the room whenever storms came. He slept on a thin mattress placed directly on the floor. Sometimes he would lie awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how his entire life had disappeared so quickly. He wasn't lazy. That was the painful part. Liam worked hard every single night. He followed rules. He stayed responsible. But no matter how hard he worked, nothing changed. Month after month, year after year, he remained trapped in the exact same place. And the worst feeling wasn't poverty, it was hopelessness. Every morning, on his walk home, he saw lights turning on inside other people's homes. Children getting ready for school, men wearing clean office clothes, couples drinking coffee together before work. The world seemed to be moving forward without him. Meanwhile, Liam felt like he was slowly disappearing into the background of life itself. Deep inside, a terrifying question kept repeating in his mind. What if this is all my life will ever be? Then, one cold morning, something happened that changed everything. Not money, not luck, not some miracle opportunity. It started with one simple decision: waking up at 5 a.m. At first, it sounded ridiculous. Impossible, even. How could waking up earlier change a man who already felt completely broken? But within 90 days, Liam's entire life transformed so dramatically that even the people around him could hardly believe it. The same man who once felt invisible suddenly became focused, disciplined, confident, and full of purpose. What he discovered during those quiet early morning hours shocked everyone around him. Because somewhere between 5 and 7 a.m., while the rest of the world was still sleeping, Liam uncovered a secret that successful people have understood for years. And once he discovered it, his life never looked the same again. Liam's life followed the same painful routine every single day. So many times that eventually the days no longer felt different from one another. At exactly 7:15 every evening, he would leave his apartment wearing the same faded gray security uniform he had owned for nearly 4 years. The sleeves were worn thin near the elbows, and the fabric around the collar had started to tear. His shoes were even worse. The soles were cracked, and whenever it rained, cold water slowly seeped inside while he walked to work through dark, empty streets. By 8 p.m., he would arrive at the warehouse on the edge of town. The building was enormous, cold, and lifeless at night. Rows of metal containers stretched endlessly beneath flickering industrial lights. Most of his shift was spent walking alone through silence, checking locks, staring at security monitors, and fighting exhaustion while the rest of the city slept peacefully. Sometimes, he would look at the clock at 2:13 a.m. or 3:47 a.m. and feel an unbearable heaviness inside his chest. Not because the work was hard, but because deep down, he knew his life was going nowhere. Liam was not stupid, he was not lazy, and he was not afraid of hard work. That was what made his situation hurt even more. Every night he sacrificed his sleep, his energy, and his health just to survive another month. Yet somehow, survival was all he ever seemed to achieve. No matter how hard he worked, nothing improved. His salary barely covered rent, electricity, and cheap food. Some weeks he skipped meals without telling anyone. Other nights, he sat alone eating instant noodles in the dark because turning on the heater cost too much money. His apartment looked less like a home and more like a place someone waited for life to begin. The room was tiny. The wallpaper near the window had peeled away from years of humidity. A single weak light bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering every few minutes whenever the electricity weakened during the night. The ceiling fan rattled loudly but barely moved the air. In winter, cold wind slipped through cracks near the old window frame. In summer, the heat became unbearable. There was almost no furniture, just a mattress on the floor, a broken chair, a small table, and silence. A kind of silence that slowly eats away at a person over time. Every morning, Around 6:15 a.m., Liam finished his shift and began the long walk home while the rest of the world was waking up. Those walks became the most painful part of his day. The sunrise painted the streets with soft golden light, but Liam barely noticed the beauty anymore. He only noticed the lives he did not have. He passed houses where families were eating breakfast together. He saw fathers in clean shirts rushing to office jobs, mothers preparing children for school, coffee brewing in warm kitchens, laughter behind windows glowing with morning light. The world seemed alive, hopeful, full of movement and purpose. Meanwhile, Liam walked home exhausted, carrying nothing except fatigue. Sometimes he would catch his reflection in store windows as he passed by. Pale face, tired eyes, slumped shoulders. A man who looked far older than 32. And every morning, the same thought returned. Is this really my future? He had tried to change before. Many times. He applied for office jobs, warehouse supervisor positions, even receptionist work at small companies. But every interview ended the same way. They wanted degrees, experience, certifications, skills he never had the opportunity to learn. Liam had finished high school, then immediately started working to help support his family. Years passed quickly after that. Bills replaced dreams, survival replaced ambition. Eventually, rejection stopped feeling surprising. It simply became normal. The truth was cruel. While other people spent their mornings building careers, learning skills, networking, and improving themselves, Liam spent his mornings sleeping because exhaustion left him no choice. He slept from around 7 in the morning until late afternoon. By the time he woke up, the day was already ending. The world had moved forward without him once again. He felt like he was living backwards. Awake while everyone slept, sleeping while everyone lived. Even his mother worried constantly about him. She lived alone in a small countryside village several hours away. Once every week, usually on Sunday evenings, she called him with the same gentle but painful questions. Liam, are you eating well? Are they treating you okay at work? When will your life get easier, my son? Liam always lied. Soon, Mama. Things are getting better. But after hanging up the phone, he often sat silently in the dark for long periods of time, staring at the flickering bulb above his head. Because deep down, he knew things were not getting better. They were standing completely still, and nothing crushes the human spirit more than feeling trapped inside a life that never changes. Some nights during his security shift, Liam imagined what his future would look like if nothing changed. 10 more years inside that warehouse. 10 more years of walking home alone at sunrise. 10 more years sleeping through life itself. The thought terrified him, yet he saw no escape, no opportunity, no path forward, only repetition, only exhaustion, only survival. And slowly, without realizing it, Liam began losing something far more dangerous than money. He began losing hope. Because eventually, after enough disappointment, a person stops believing effort matters at all. That was the prison Liam truly lived inside. Not poverty, not the night shifts, not the broken apartment. It was the belief that no matter how hard he worked, his life would remain exactly the same. And that is where millions of people silently suffer every day. Working hard, staying tired, doing their best, yet secretly wondering why their lives never move forward. One cold Tuesday morning in November, just as Liam was preparing to leave the warehouse after another exhausting night shift, his phone suddenly rang. The sound echoed sharply through the empty security office. Almost nobody called him that early. For a second, he stared at the screen with a strange feeling in his chest. It was his younger sister. The moment he answered, he heard panic in her voice. Liam, you need to come home now. Mama collapsed. She's in the clinic. Everything inside him froze. For a few seconds, the world around him disappeared. The humming lights above him, the security monitors, the warehouse. None of it mattered anymore. His heart pounded violently as fear rushed through his body. Without even changing clothes, Liam grabbed his bag and ran to the bus station while the early morning sky was still dark. The journey back to his village took nearly 3 hours, but to Liam it felt endless. He sat beside the window staring silently at the passing roads, gripping his phone tightly the entire time, his mind filled with terrible thoughts. What if he was too late? What if this was the last time he would see her alive? Guilt began crushing him from the inside. For years, his mother had worked herself to exhaustion raising him. She sacrificed everything so he could survive. And yet at 32 years old, he still could not even afford to give her a peaceful life. When Liam finally arrived at the small countryside clinic, the sight of his mother shattered him. She looked smaller somehow, fragile, weak. An oxygen tube rested beneath her nose while her tired eyes slowly opened to look at him. The strong woman he remembered from childhood, the woman who carried heavy baskets through fields under the burning sun, now looked painfully exhausted. Liam sat beside her bed and held her hand carefully. Her skin felt cold and thin. The doctor explained quietly that she had collapsed from stress, exhaustion, and poor nutrition. She needed proper rest, medicine, and better care, things Liam knew he could barely afford. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then his mother squeezed his hand gently. "Liam," she whispered weakly. "My son, I don't have much time left." His eyes immediately filled with tears. "No, Mama, don't say that." But she continued softly, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Please, don't waste your life the way I wasted mine." The words pierced straight through him. "I spent my whole life surviving," she said, "working every day, waiting for things to get better someday. But someday comes faster than people think." Tears rolled down Liam's face as he lowered his head beside her bed. "I tried, Mama," he whispered painfully. "I really tried." "I know," she replied. "But working hard alone is not enough. You need to change your life, before life changes you." Those words stayed inside him long after she fell asleep. Liam walked slowly outside the clinic, unable to breathe properly beneath the weight of his emotions. The village was silent. The air was cold against his skin. Above him, the sky was beginning to soften into deep shades of blue as dawn approached. Then he noticed the time, 5 a.m. A few farmers were already walking toward the fields, carrying tools across their shoulders. Birds had started singing somewhere in the distance. The world felt strangely calm, almost frozen in time. Liam stood there alone in the quiet dawn, staring at the empty road ahead of him, and suddenly, something inside him broke. Not with sadness, with realization. He saw his entire future clearly for the first time. If he continued living the same way, nothing would ever change. 10 years would pass, then 20, and one day he would wake up old, exhausted, and full of regret, just like his mother. The thought terrified him. At that moment, standing outside that small clinic while the sun slowly rose over the sleeping village, Thomas made a decision that would change the rest of his life forever. "No more," he whispered to himself. "No more surviving. No more excuses. No more waiting." For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten existed: hope. And although he did not know exactly how he would change his life yet, deep down, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could not remain the same man anymore. On the bus ride back to the city, Liam sat quietly near the back, exhausted both physically and emotionally. His mother's words repeated endlessly inside his mind: "Don't waste your life like I wasted mine." Outside the window, the sky slowly brightened as dawn spread across the countryside. Most passengers were half asleep, their heads leaning against cold glass windows, while the bus rattled along empty roads. Liam stared silently at his reflection, wondering if real change was even possible for someone like him. Then his attention shifted toward a man sitting several rows ahead. He looked different from everyone else on the bus: calm, well-dressed, focused. The man wore a dark coat and polished shoes, and in his hands was a book filled with highlighted notes. Unlike the exhausted workers surrounding him, this man looked completely awake, completely present. There was a strange sense of peace about him. Liam recognized him almost immediately. Mr. Chun, a businessman known throughout the town for owning several successful stores and warehouses. People often spoke about him with admiration. Some even said he had once been poor himself before building his businesses from nothing. Liam glanced at the time displayed above the driver. 6:02 a.m. That confused him. Why would a successful businessman be awake this early riding a regular bus? Before he could stop himself, Liam leaned forward slightly. "Excuse me, sir." Mr. Chun looked up from his book. "Yes?" Liam hesitated nervously before speaking. "Why are you awake this early? I mean, someone successful like you." Mr. Chun smiled faintly, almost amused by the question. "Because these hours matter the most." Liam frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Mr. Chun closed his book slowly. "I wake up every day at 4:30 a.m., he said calmly. "For the first 2 hours of the morning, before the world wakes up, I read, think, learn, and plan my day." Thomas stared at him in disbelief. "But don't you get tired?" "I sleep at 9, Mr. Chun replied. Discipline creates energy. Chaos destroys it. The words landed heavily inside Liam's mind. Mr. Chun studied his tired face for a moment. You work night shifts, don't you? Liam nodded. Security guard. And when do you sleep? Usually around 7 in the morning until late afternoon. Mr. Chun leaned back quietly, then sighed. That's why you feel trapped. Liam looked confused. You are awake while the world sleeps, Mr. Chun continued, and asleep while the world builds their future. Something about those words hit Liam deeply because he knew they were true. Every morning he watched people beginning their lives while he walked home exhausted. Every day disappeared while he slept through it. For years, he thought his problem was money, but maybe his real problem was time. Mr. Chun leaned closer and lowered his voice slightly. Let me tell you something most people never understand, he said. The hours between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. are magic hours. Liam almost laughed. Magic? Yes, Mr. Chun replied seriously. Because during those hours, distractions disappear. The world becomes quiet. Your mind becomes sharper. Your discipline becomes stronger. That is when successful people build their future while everyone else is still dreaming. Liam felt something awaken inside him. Hope. Dangerous, unfamiliar hope. But I work nights, he said quietly. I don't have time. Mr. Chun shook his head immediately. No, you don't protect your time. The sentence stunned him into silence. For years, Mr. Chun continued, you have been using all your energy just to survive. But survival alone never creates success. Hard work alone is not enough. Millions of people work hard every day and stay exactly where they are. Liam slowly lowered his eyes. That was his life. Mr. Chun pointed toward the rising sun outside the bus window. Those morning hours are sacred, he said. That is where people reinvent themselves, learn skills, build businesses, exercise, read, think clearly, change direction. A person who controls their mornings eventually controls their life. The bus became quiet again for a moment. Then Mr. Chun reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card. I'll give you a challenge, he said. Liam took the card carefully. 90 days. Mr. Chun's voice became firm. For the next 90 days, wake up at 5 a.m. every single morning. No excuses. Use 1 hour to build skills that can change your future. Use the second hour to strengthen your body and mind. Learn, read, exercise, think, grow. Liam looked down at the card in his hand. And if I fail, you will stay exactly where you are now. The answer was brutally simple. Then, Mr. Chun smiled slightly. But if you succeed, he said, your life will never look the same again. For the first time in years, Liam felt like someone finally understood why he was stuck. It wasn't because he lacked intelligence. It wasn't because he lacked effort. It was because his life had become trapped inside survival mode. And somewhere between 5 and 7 a.m., there might finally be a way out. The next morning, Liam's alarm exploded through the darkness at exactly 5 a.m. For a few seconds, he forgot where he was. His body felt heavy, his eyes burned, and every muscle inside him screamed to stay in bed. Outside his small apartment window, the city was still silent. Even the streetlights were still glowing faintly against the dark sky. Then reality hit him. The challenge had begun. Liam reached for his phone instinctively, ready to silence the alarm and fall back asleep. His body desperately wanted rest. After years of working night shifts and sleeping through the mornings, waking up this early felt unnatural, almost painful. His mind immediately started negotiating. Just today. You're too tired. You can start tomorrow. But then he remembered his mother lying weakly in that hospital bed. Don't waste your life like I wasted mine. Liam slowly sat up. Every part of him resisted. Still, he stood up anyway. That first morning felt miserable. His apartment was freezing cold. His eyes struggled to stay open while he splashed water on his face in the bathroom sink. He looked terrible in the mirror, dark circles beneath his eyes, exhausted skin, shoulders slumped from years of fatigue. For a moment, he questioned everything. How could waking up earlier possibly change his life? But he remembered something Mr. Chun had said on the bus. Discipline begins when motivation disappears. So Liam sat down at the small table beside his flickering light bulb, opened his old phone, and searched for free Excel tutorials on YouTube. The videos felt confusing at first. Spreadsheets, formulas, charts, numbers, Most of it made no sense to him. His exhausted mind drifted constantly. Some mornings he replayed the same 5-minute lesson 3 or 4 times because he could barely focus. Other mornings he almost fell asleep sitting upright in his chair, but he kept watching. At 6 a.m., he forced himself outside for a walk. The cold morning air hit his face sharply as he moved through nearly empty streets. At first, those walks felt pointless. His legs ached from exhaustion after working nights. Sometimes his entire body felt weak from lack of sleep. Yet slowly, he began noticing things he had ignored for years. The silence before sunrise, the sound of birds waking up, the soft orange light spreading across the sky, the strange peace that existed while most people were still asleep. For the first time in a long time, Liam no longer felt like he was only surviving. He felt like he was building something, even if he could not see the results yet. Then he would return home, read articles about accounting for another 30 minutes, and finally collapse into bed around 7:30 inches the morning before sleeping until early afternoon. By 3 p.m., he prepared for another night shift at the warehouse. Then the cycle repeated again, and again, and again. The first week was hell. There was no inspirational music, no sudden transformation, no magical burst of energy, only exhaustion. Liam's body hated the new routine. His head pounded constantly from fatigue. Some mornings, he stared blankly at the computer screen while trying to understand simple Excel formulas. Other days he felt so physically drained during work that he wondered if he was destroying himself instead of improving himself. Worst of all, nobody understood what he was doing. His coworkers laughed when they heard he was waking up at 5 a.m. Why would you torture yourself like that? You already work nights. Are you crazy? Even his friends thought the idea was pointless. You need rest, not more work. But none of them understood what Liam understood now. He was not trying to escape tiredness anymore. He was trying to escape the life that tiredness had trapped him inside. That difference changed everything. So even when nobody believed in him, he kept going. Every morning. 5 a.m. No excuses, no negotiations. Some mornings, he sat at his tiny kitchen table wrapped in a blanket because the apartment was too cold. Other mornings his internet connection failed halfway through lessons. Sometimes frustration overwhelmed him so badly that he wanted to throw his phone across the room, but he kept learning. Excel spreadsheets, data organization, basic bookkeeping, accounting principles. Little by little, information that once looked impossible slowly started making sense. Then around day 20, something unexpected happened. Liam woke up 2 minutes before his alarm. For the first time, his body no longer fought the routine completely. The exhaustion was still there, but something else had appeared beside it. Momentum. His morning walks became easier. His mind felt sharper during lessons. He could follow tutorials longer without losing focus. He even started taking handwritten notes inside an old notebook he found in a drawer. Small improvements began appearing everywhere. His posture changed. His confidence improved. Even his face looked different in the mirror. Not because life had become easier, because for the first time in years, he had direction. By the second month, Liam had completed several online Excel and accounting courses. He earned his first certificate and printed it carefully at a local shop, staring at the paper for several seconds after holding it in his hands. It was just a certificate, but to Liam, it felt like proof that he was no longer stuck. At work, people started noticing changes too. "You seem different lately," one coworker told him during a shift. "You look healthier." Liam smiled quietly, because the truth was deeper than they realized. He was not only changing his schedule, he was changing his identity. Each morning he woke up at 5 a.m. He was proving something to himself that years of failure had nearly destroyed, that he was still capable of growth, still capable of discipline, still capable of building a better future. And although the process remained lonely, exhausting, and painfully slow, Liam refused to stop because deep down, he finally understood something powerful. The pain of changing your life is temporary, but the pain of remaining the same lasts forever. By the beginning of the 3rd month, something inside Liam had completely changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, like the sunrise he now witnessed every morning. His body had finally adapted to the 5 a.m. routine. The painful exhaustion that once controlled him no longer felt unbearable. He still worked long nights at the warehouse, but now there was structure in his life, purpose, momentum. Every morning he woke up with a reason to move forward instead of simply surviving another day. And for the first time in years, Liam began feeling proud of himself. The small kitchen table where he once sat feeling hopeless had transformed into his personal classroom. His notebook was now filled with handwritten formulas, accounting terms, Excel shortcuts, and daily goals. What once looked confusing now felt familiar. He could build spreadsheets confidently. He understood inventory tracking, bookkeeping basics, and data organization. Each new skill gave him something he had lost a long time ago. Confidence. Liam completed his first online certification course, then another, then another. After printing them at a small internet cafe near his apartment, he carefully placed the certificates beside his bed where he could see them every morning before work. To other people, they were simple pieces of paper. To Liam, they were proof that he was no longer trapped inside the same life. Even physically, he looked different now. The daily morning walks had slowly changed his body. His face looked healthier. His shoulders stood straighter. He had lost weight, but more importantly, he no longer carried the same defeated expression in his eyes. Co-workers at the warehouse started noticing the transformation. "Liam, what happened to you?" one of them asked during a lunch break. "You look like a completely different person lately." Liam smiled quietly. "I finally stopped wasting my mornings." But the biggest change was invisible. His mind had changed. The hopelessness that once followed him everywhere was slowly disappearing. Instead of waking up feeling trapped, he now woke up feeling progress. Every day mattered. Every morning had purpose. Every hour invested into learning pushed him one step further away from the life he feared most. Then one evening during his night shift, Liam noticed something that frustrated him. The warehouse inventory system was a complete mess. Workers constantly misplaced products. Numbers were written incorrectly. Managers wasted hours trying to track missing shipments. Everything was disorganized because the company still relied on outdated handwritten records. A few months earlier, Liam would have ignored the problem completely. But now his mind worked differently. Instead of complaining, he saw opportunity. That night after work, he returned home and spent his morning creating something new using the Excel skills he had taught himself. He designed a simple digital inventory tracking system for the warehouse, organized spreadsheets, item categories, shipment logs, and automatic calculations that made tracking inventory easier and faster. It took him nearly 2 weeks to finish. Some nights he almost gave up from frustration when formulas failed or calculations broke. But he kept fixing problems, learning more, improving the system little by little. Finally, one morning before leaving work, Liam gathered enough courage to show it to his supervisor. At first, the supervisor barely paid attention, but after a few minutes of looking through the spreadsheet, his expression changed completely. "Wait, you made this yourself?" Liam nodded nervously. "I've been studying accounting in Excel before work every morning." The supervisor looked stunned. "You learned all this on your own?" "Yes." For a long moment, the man simply stared at him. Then he smiled. "This is actually impressive." Within days, word about Liam's inventory system spread through the warehouse management team. The warehouse owner himself requested a meeting after hearing how much time and confusion the new system could save. Liam walked into that office terrified. Just months earlier, he had been an invisible night guard nobody noticed. Now managers were discussing his ideas seriously. The owner reviewed the spreadsheets carefully, asking questions while Liam explained the system step by step. His hands shook slightly during the conversation, but deep inside, he realized something incredible. He belonged in the room. Not because someone gave him permission, because he had earned it. Then came the moment that changed everything. 3 days later, Thomas was called back into the office. The warehouse was expanding its accounting department, and management needed someone who understood warehouse operations while also having bookkeeping and organizational skills. The owner looked directly at him. "We want to offer you the position." Liam froze. For several seconds, he genuinely could not speak. A daytime office job, double his current salary, benefits, a future. The exact kind of opportunity he once believed people like him could never reach. Emotion tightened inside his chest so strongly that he had to look down to hide tears forming in his eyes. Only 90 days earlier, he had been walking home at sunrise feeling invisible and hopeless. Now his hard work was finally creating real change. Not luck, not miracles. Discipline, consistency, morning after morning after morning. And in that moment, Liam realized something powerful. The early mornings had not only changed his career, they had rebuilt the man he thought he had lost forever. 1 year later, Liam's life looked completely different. He was no longer the exhausted night security guard walking home alone at sunrise with worn-out shoes and hopeless thoughts. Now he worked as the lead accountant for the same company where he once felt invisible. He wore clean shirts to work, managed financial reports, and trained new employees who respected him for his discipline and knowledge. But the biggest change was not his position. It was the peace he finally carried inside himself. Liam had moved out of the tiny apartment that once felt like a prison. He rented a small but comfortable 2-bedroom home, filled with light and warmth. Most importantly, he brought his mother to live with him in the city, so she could receive proper medical care. Sometimes in the mornings, he would see her sitting near the kitchen window drinking tea peacefully, and every time he saw her smile, he remembered the promise he made outside that clinic at 5 a.m. A promise that changed everything, and despite his success, one thing never changed. Every morning at exactly 5 a.m., Liam still woke up before sunrise. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Liam's quiet early hours had become sacred to him. While the world slept, he still read books, learned new software, exercised, and planned his future. He understood now that success was not something you reach once and keep forever. It was something you practiced daily. One morning, a coworker asked him, "Liam, you already made it. Why do you still wake up so early?" Liam smiled softly before answering. "Because success is not a destination," he said. "It's a daily practice." And every single day, his practice still began at 5 a.m. Now the question is no longer whether Liam changed his life. The real question is, will you, tonight, before you go to sleep, make one decision. Set your alarm for 5 a.m., not 5:15, not maybe tomorrow. Exactly 5 a.m. Then give yourself the same challenge, Liam. Accepted 90 days. 90 mornings of discipline while the rest of the world sleeps. Use those quiet hours to build something your future self will thank you for. A new skill, a stronger body, a business idea, a better life. So tell me in the comments below, what will you build during your first hour tomorrow morning? And if this story inspired you, subscribe to the channel, because every week we share powerful stories that can transform the way you think, live, and grow. Remember this. Your future self is waiting on the other side of that alarm clock. Don't keep them waiting.